words, which is great where people are coming from with this. I'd like to introduce Sofia from Uganda. She's an English language teacher, trainer and tutor, and she has a strong passion for innovative and creative learning teaching methodologies. She's fluent in 8 local languages and 2 international languages. So this shows her multilingual background, which enables her to foster deep cultural connections and enhance her understanding of language acquisition. She specialises in several things, creating engaging oral language materials, storytelling, developing activities that promote language pattern recognition, pronunciation and critical thinking, which sounds really interesting. She's a community leader and as such, she's founded educational clubs, initiated self-help projects and organised events to celebrate linguistic diversity and preserve cultural heritage, which all sounds so interesting. I'm really looking forward to this webinar, and have a look at the quotation from her on the slide as well. I believe that language acquisition flourishes in creative environments where students connect classroom learning to their lived experiences. So great to have you with us today, Sofia, and over to you for the webinar.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. Today's objectives are based on our theme, and that is already mentioned as the cultural items in promoting a practical multilingual English teaching language. Our objectives are, 1, to discuss how we can integrate cultural elements for effective multilingual English language teaching. And lastly is to explore research-backed strategies and practical application. Next. Can you try to look at this picture? Try to look at the picture and identify the cultural items that are being displayed by that person in the picture. I request you unmute, then you share with us. This would be given to the first lucky ones, the first 5 lucky ones. I request you unmute, then you share with us some of the cultural items that you can see in the picture. We are waiting for the first 5 lucky ones.
Yeah, some colleagues started to write in the chat actually, so you can also check the chat. Yeah.
You can help and check in the chat. The first 5 can unmute and share with us. Can help and read what is written in the chat.
I have some interesting answers. So somebody says bamboo, somebody says rural place, somebody says animal skin.
Oh yeah, thank you. We're waiting for some members who would unmute and share with us too.
Probably better not to get people to unmute because there's a lot of people at the moment. There's a few other people saying quilt and animal skin. Lots of contributions actually here in the chat, which is great. And Ethiopian culture, South Ethiopian, maybe.
Okay. In the picture there, I have one of my students, as I was trying to test this pedagogy of integrating cultural items or artifacts in the teaching, they came up with and they had to display. In the display there, we have things like the calabash, the bag cloth, the staple food, and the staple food includes grains like millet, maize, and so on. Now, let us look at what research says about the cultural artifacts integration in the teaching of English language. Research shows that there is a consistency in enhancing of the learner's learning outcomes. In other words, when the artifacts are integrated in our teaching or in our lessons, it enhances the learning outcome. Here you find that once we use things like the physical artifacts, the digital artifacts, you'll find that the stated learning outcomes will be achieved. The research also shows us that multilingual approaches recognizes students' existing linguistic knowledge as resources. Here, you find that in most cases, the students show that the acknowledging knowledge or the existing knowledge is incorporated with the new knowledge. In other words, the multilingual approaches view a learner's language as interconnected resources which are supported and they're treated as one than separating. In most cases, when teaching of English is done, English is considered to be the only language used. But when we take the local languages, you'll find that a multilingual approach is applied in the class. Now, let us look at the studies. What does the study demonstrate? It also demonstrates that higher engagement is realized when artifacts or cultural elements are used in the teaching. Not only that, research also shows that there will be retention and proficiency when cultural contexts are integrated. Lastly, addictive bilingualism is promoted, and it can also promote faster acquisition of the targeted language structures. Next. We have the theoretical framework. What does this theoretical framework show us as we use the cultural artifacts in teaching of the English language? One, it shows that the cultural identity provides cognitive framework for language acquisition. For example, the framework here tells us that learners are able to categorize and prioritize and contextualize the linguistic information and the relevance of the learning based on the culture for any individual will be realized. We also look at Vygotsky's zone of proximal development, which expands in multilingual contexts. Here, this ZPD shows us that the gap between what a learner has already done independently and what a learner can achieve through guidance expands the significance in multilingual context. In other words, multilingual environment provides scaffolding opportunities through cross-linguistic sharing. Besides that, the framework also shows us that the first language serves as scaffold for second language acquisition. Here you find that the local language affects the reference points of the understanding of the new grammatical structure. In other words, the first language builds a foundation for the second language. Lastly, the cultural responsiveness increases learner investment in language outcomes. I have a question here that I would request you to put the answer in the chat. Research shows that acknowledging learners' first languages hinders English acquisition. True or false? Can put your answer in the chat. Thank you. You see some responses there already. One person says true. Another one says false. True. Very true. Another one says false. False. Thank you. True. True. Okay. Thank you so much. It is false. The reason is that the L1, which is known as the first language, knowledge, provides a foundation for L2 learning. When educators acknowledges, respects, and strategically incorporates the students' first languages, you will find that there will be a transfer of existing linguistic knowledge and literacy skills from their first language to English. So the answer is false. Thank you so much. Next. Let us look at the different artifacts that we can use in integrating in our lesson, that we can use in integration, or that we can use to teach a practical multilingual English lesson. These artifacts are both physical and digital. Now, when we look at the physical artifacts, here we look at things like the historical items, the clothing, the instruments, the art, and food. Then when you look at the digital artifacts, these include things like the virtual museums, interactive maps, and the cultural exchanges. When you look at these artifacts, they create a meaningful context for vocabulary acquisition and cultural understanding. Lastly, these cultural artifacts are authentic. In other words, they promote authentication of language experience through tangible connections. Now, look at the picture. There we have different artifacts that were displayed during the trial of this pedagogy, or the practical part in the lesson. And we have different artifacts being displayed there. Now, can you try to share and explain in the chat the cultural artifact from your heritage, and explain what it is and what is its purpose? For example, to any English-speaking person, if you have just received an English-speaking person to your area, what are the artifacts that you would really present to that visitor, and you explain its purpose? We share in the chat. Yes, you can check in the chat what is already there.
Nothing there yet. I think it might take people a couple of minutes to write something.
Oh, yes.
Someone's asking, what was the question again? It's written on the screen, at the bottom of the screen.
Okay. Yet select a cultural artifact from your heritage, then explain what it is and what is its purpose to an English-speaking visitor. Then we share in the chat. Thank you.
Got somebody saying about local proverbs, which help better understanding of the new language. Is that included? Is that something you'd include as an artifact?
A proverb. Yes.
Or maybe people can look at the picture, the photo. Oh, and one here, a cola nut may represent salutation or greetings. Which country is that, Jennifer? And then coming in now, a tente, a basket, mango jam, Bhojpuri language, very symbolic of Mauritanian, Langas, Creole, Mauritian, and local idioms. Very interesting. Oh, from Igbo in Nigerian, the cola nut. Lovely ideas.
We are requested to know its purpose.
I love the idea of mango jam. And a
Wow.
calabash, representing a water bottle in English. Clay pots for different home purposes from Ethiopia. Thank you, Endeshore. Lovely ideas. A bark cloth that they're talking about the picture now in the artifact used for burial. Great, lots of ideas there.
And see the last one there in the chat.
And that's the kola nut. Oh, from Steve. A kola nut meaning a wedding in Senegal. Thank you, Steve.
Okay. Thank you. Shall keep on sharing. Next. Let us look at the literature and the media integration. When we are integrating artifacts in our English teaching, practically we can also have the literature and we can also use the media. But what we have to put in mind that before we use them, we must look at the selection criteria. And these are the things that we put in the mind. We look at the accessibility, the linguistic complexity, cultural relevance, and the student interest. What would be the implementation methods? How would we use this literature and the media integration? We can use a paired multilingual or English texts. Now, we have the example in the picture there. Then we have the cultural context pre-teaching. Here, before we start with the real teaching, we can allow learners to sing the local songs from their locality. We can allow them mention some of the items that they use at home as we connect to the new lesson. We can also look at vocabulary bridges between languages. This is where we can have words mentioned in the local language, then we can mention again in English. Then lastly, the media supplements for comprehension. Some of the text or media text which are we can have multimedia texts which can be used in the teaching or in integration, and that can promote comprehension. Now, as you look at the picture there, we had a paired multilingual stroke English text where a student came up with an item, and that was a calabash, got a flashcard, wrote its name in the local language, and then wrote it in English. In the local language there, it is written awali, and in English, it is a calabash. Besides that flashcard, there is a story book. And in that storybook, there is a description of how elders use the calabash during different traditional ceremonies within her locality. Now, can you try to look at that picture and you try to choose how you would adapt texts for your multilingual classroom from the list above, that is A to D, which is a multi-choice option above, and we share in the chat. Thank you. I see one person says B. Can read for us more in the chat there.
Yes, some people are saying B or C and A and B. I think it's mostly B that people are saying, and C as well. So lots of cultural context pre-teaching and vocabulary bridges. Somebody said E, although there isn't one. One person said D. So all of them really. And A. Lots of ideas. Thank you for the contributions.
Well, thank you so much. The implementation method can go with the selection criteria. You look at what can be accessible for you, which one will be easily to cater for the linguistic complexity, which one will be relevant to your learners according to their cultural background, and which one will arouse their curiosity, that is student interest. And indeed, the cultural items are very important when we integrate them in our teaching. Next. Let's look at the practical implementation strategies. What are some of the strategies that we can put across to help us achieve the cultural integration in English teaching? One, we can have the daily techniques. Daily techniques, these are the activities that we can use daily in our lessons. And these daily techniques include things like the cultural references, the flashcards. An example was in the previous picture where my student came up with a flashcard. We can also use the multilingual word walls with the images. In most cases, if you are able to display the artifact, the real object, then you can match it with a word on the wall. But if it's not there, then you can draw it. That is multilingual word walls with images. The word is written in the local language, a targeted language, and it is also written in English. Then we have the cultural objectives. An example here is when a student or students or learners are given a chance to explain some of the activities that are designed at home or that are practiced, some of the ceremonies that are practiced, but these are cultural ceremonies, are objective, they are for a purpose. For example here, students can explain the significance of the tea ceremonies across 3 different homes or different areas. Now, and these ones can be of relevant to the language. For example, some cultures, there is a tea hour, tea party, and there are reasons why people come together. They come to recall of the past, to plan for the future, to solve conflicts, and many others. Lastly, here we look at the cultural showcase. This one can be designed and be done monthly within 15 minutes, where students' presentations with artifacts are presented before the rest. How can this be done? Learners are guided. For example, they can be requested to come with different cultural artifacts that they use at home. Then when they come to class, they explain to others. And as they will be explaining, they're given a chance to mention them in their languages, to give the purpose, and then again share them in English. The integration here can include things like the cultural warm-ups, and these ones can take 2 to 3 minutes. That is within the class. Cultural warm-ups, like we can have singing of our traditional songs within the class, and learners are given a chance to choose. Because if you say now, I want you to sing, bring for us the song that you sing in your home or according to your culture, then others will question and say why. So we give them a chance. Then lastly, we can also try to allow the artifacts exploration. A design can be given or can be promoted in the class, that learners come with their artifacts, display them in the class, then different areas are located, and learners are allowed to move from one area to another to explore those different artifacts displayed in the class. And this can be done between 15 to 10 minutes. But this one is mainly for the upper levels. If it is within the nursery section, that is the ECD area, then we can have like 2 to 3 minutes. The attention span for the learners does not go beyond 5, especially in the lower classes. Next. Let us look at the case studies. What do the case studies show us when it comes to the cultural integration or teaching English language? Now, we have examples here, like we can base on the rural secondary schools. This is where students can collect local folktales and create illustrated English storybooks. In our previous picture, one student had to come up with different stories and she had to write, collect it together, then wrote it as a book. Then we can also have the urban multilingual classroom. This one can be designed and be practiced or done weekly, and it can take like a 20-minute video exchange with the partner schools within 3 countries. That is an example. Another case study is on Adult Education Center. This is where the professionals develop bilingual industry glossaries with the cultural context. Now, what are the measurable outcomes? In one case, 27% increase in vocabulary retention. There can be 18% higher writing assessment scores. Student confidence ratings improves from 3.2 to 4.4. Which of these case studies most resembles your teaching context? We share in the chat. Wow. Okay, there is A, C, thank you, B, wow. Thank you, A, C, B. Okay, thank you so much for your participation. The case study or choosing can go hand in hand with our locality. Or like others say now, if I'm in the rural secondary school, then that one can work for me if my school is found within the rural. Others can say, since I'm in a urban center, I can take the urban multilingual classroom. So the locality can determine the level of education. Thank you. Many are still contributing. All right. Now let us look at the addressing implementation challenges. What are some of the challenges that we can face as we implement this method? You find that as we implement our strategies or the method, we can realize limited resources. At times, there is mixed proficiency levels, then institutional resistance. Some institutions, I want to give an example. They look at cultural practices as evil. Even the items are considered to be evil. But when we look at the reality, the learners that we have come from different localities, and they have a lot of cultural items within their homes. Why should we teach in the class in an abstract way? You're teaching, for example, about a mat, a papyrus mat, and the learner is not looking at the papyrus mat, but it is at home. But when the learners bring in the class, it would be good. But most institutions do not allow. That is institutional resistance. Then we look at the adaptable solutions. There is also low resource approaches. And lastly, differentiated cultural content. What solutions would you suggest for these challenges? Put in the chat. What solutions would you suggest for these challenges? Thank you. Someone says adaptable solutions. Another one says B, that is adaptable solutions. Differentiated cultural content. Thank you. Another one says A. Another one says adaptable solutions. Okay. Thank you for your contribution. Shall continue sharing the chart. Addressing the implementation challenges is already what we have already looked at. And all right, many people are still giving their contribution is in the chat. Thank you. Okay, now let us look at the assessment and evaluation. At the end of conducting our lesson, then we need to assess and evaluate the lessons. How can we do this as we integrate the cultural items in our teaching? One, we can look at the culturally responsive assessment. Then we can also have the multiple pathways to demonstrate proficiency. There is also culture-specific performance tasks. An example here of culture-specific performance task is when learners can be guided on how to come up with any presentation. Maybe they're told to go home, write some local folk tales. They come with their items, then they come and present before the rest, according to their culture. Code switching recognition in evaluation. Here, learners can be given a chance to mention the artifacts in their local languages, then again, they mention in English. A portfolio-based cultural competence assessment can also be done or carried out. This is where learners are given a chance to write or reflect on the activities that they have already done. Like if they have come up with different cultural artifacts, they display them. They come up with the different local stories, proverbs, riddles, tongue twisters. And as they collect them, they keep on writing what has happened there now. I mean, from day to day. They reflect on what they did, what they came up with, what they have, and that is a portfolio-based cultural competence. Which of these assessment approaches above best supports multilingual learners in your context? Look at the picture there. I have a student who came up with the different items like the rhyme. Then she also came up with one of the local instrument, and she wrote it in the local language as the ngoma, and also a drum. But besides that book, that rhyme book, she also had her portfolio. She wrote on how she started collecting these cultural items and what did she face, and later she came up with a full book. Now to you, which of these, oh, sorry, I already have, I see the contributions there. Thank you so much. One says A, another one's B. Can you read for me in the chat, more contributions in the chat?
Yeah, there's a lot of different answers here. E, A, B, C. I think people have included all of these things. D. Yeah, I think it's very difficult, isn't it, to change assessment and evaluation. But these are ideally all great, I think. A few people saying A, only A.
Oh,
different ideas. Great.
Thank you. Next. What are our takeaway tips? In other words, how would you work on these ideas before our discussion in the Telegram group on Friday? These are the key takeaways. One is cultural integration enhances, but not hindering, English acquisition. Two, the multilingual approaches build on existing student knowledge. I still have an example here. that if a learner knows that, a learner or a student knows that a drum in Luganda is known as engoma, then comes to learn about it in English as a drum, then it means that this student has already added on the existing knowledge. Lastly, we have the practical implementation that requires intentional planning. Yeah, planning is not easy. You have to undergo different steps, different processes in order to come up with different cultural items. Much as it's the intentional planning, it requires intentional planning, but its results are significant. Its results are very good. For more information about culture in the class, below are the links that you can access, and you get to know more about culture in the class. And here, as we're looking at the class, we are looking at levels starting from the nursery to the university level. Next. Can you try to describe the picture before you? Describe it in the chat. Describe the picture before you, the chat. Yes, what do we have in the chat there?
Somebody said a person showing off their cultural artifacts.
Good.
It looks like some sort of drum and a booklet of stories, maybe.
Yes. You've already described it too. We are waiting for more people to describe the picture.
She looks very happy with her cultural artifacts, doesn't she?
Oh, yes. Learners are always happy when they're able to use the different cultural artifacts from their home.
Yeah,
Thank
somebody
you.
saying here a bit of pride with their artifacts, holding a picture written on the stories, pride in her own learning, maybe, folk tales, it could be, storytelling, lots of ideas there. A child exposing her cultural items. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, we have the storybook and a cultural drum. She's telling a story. Thank you. Showing her cultural items. Thank you. Different teaching aids. It's a woman who holds engoma. Yeah, engoma is a drum. Thank you. A teacher using cultural artifacts in teaching, reading, storytelling. Thank you. Hands-on approach learning. Okay, thank you so much. That was one of my students, and she was excited to come up with a collection of stories in that storybook you're saying. And she told us one of her favorite cultural artifacts is the drum. When we were sharing, earlier on, we looked at the purpose of a cultural artifact. She said for her, when she's stressed up, yes, she's a student doing her course. When she's stressed up and she starts drumming, she really feels she's at home. And she says at home they have a drum. When her father comes home and he sees the mother is not happy, he only goes and starts drumming and the mother starts smiling. I have more questions here and before you, and I leave them for you. Next. Any
Thank you so much, Sophia. And we have had some questions in the chat, and well, I'll ask you those first. And after that, maybe some other people would like to put their hand up, and we can ask them to unmute to share some of their own cultural artifacts, maybe. One of the first questions was, How can we preserve local languages? I wonder if you had any insight on that.
We can preserve local languages by writing them. When we write in our local languages, then we keep on reading what we have written in the local language. That is preserving our local languages.
And I think all this,
we can also translate the English texts into the local languages. That is preserving our local language.
And bringing them into class and bringing them into class with these little artifacts as well, I think is a great way of preserving them, isn't it?
Oh, yes. Thank you.
And another question was, how can, in a multicultural space, how can language bring people together? That's an interesting question.
In a multiple space, language can bring people together when they come together to share their joy, when they come together to share their culture, and they speak the language. Just like in class, when you give learners a chance to group themselves according to their language, the learners start jumping. I've ever experienced this. They jump, they really embrace each other. That is coming together.
Thank you. And another question there was, what about using stories? Have you got any examples of short stories from different cultures that you've used maybe successfully in class?
Short stories are very interesting. And when you want the learners to enjoy your lesson and to like your class and not even leave the class, whenever you're teaching, you must come up with a story. Because the learners believe in what people say. So as you try to narrate the stories, they imagine and they put imagination in reality. So short stories are very interesting. They promote interest in learning. They promote love for school. So it's very good to use short stories in teaching in class. And these mainly are local stories. When you're narrating in the local language, they really see things happening. Then when you translate in English, wow, confirms what it is.
That's right. Great. Yeah. This is a very interesting question that Seinabu Faye has just put in the chat. How can we solve the problems of cultural difference reality in classes? Have you got any examples of solving these cultural difference problems?
Yes, we solve this, one, by allowing the learners of different cultures to first share their cultural items, the cultural practices. Then later, you allow them to mix up. You say, is there anyone who would love to use this from this culture? Is there anyone who is ready to act as maybe like, for example, we can say Emunyankole from Mbarara, if at all we are in Buganda or we are in Acholi. You know, Uganda is, I'm giving an example. Uganda is a multilingual country. And you find in the class like different, like 7 languages or tribes in the class. But how do we always manage them? That we manage them by allowing them first share their cultural practices, items, then later we mix them up. So that's how we solve that challenge.
Yeah, it is tricky though, isn't it? Some people putting in the chat that it's difficult to allow lots of local languages in. You have to be quite skilled to be able to do it. There was one question that asked the opposite. How do we minimize the influence of culture in English classes? That's a strange question with the topic of this webinar, which is to maximize it. How would you answer that? Are there any opportunities, any situations, do you think, when we need to minimize the use of culture?
Minimizing the use of culture. How do we? I thought we would not minimize it, but we would bring it on board.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, that's an odd question. Maybe you'd like to explain why you want to minimize it.
When we bring it on board, especially in the class setting, the learners unite together. As they feel proud of one's culture, then they listen to another one. They keep on respecting each other. As they respect each other, they come together. So I would not support minimizing it.
Or maybe it's the idea of cultural ideas taking over from the English teaching, because of course you've got to do the English teaching as well. If you do culture instead of English teaching, then you're not doing your job. So maybe it's to stop culture expanding so much into the classroom that you stop teaching English.
It cannot stop teaching English, because here we are looking at, for example, when you're dealing with the local language, we look at local language being a foundation of L2. Building a new language to the existing one is very important. And when you look at our country, for example, Uganda now, they are emphasizing teaching in the local language from P1 to P3, even in our nursery. Yeah, so.
Yeah. You're right. So Jennifer's saying perhaps they're trying to ask how to minimize the complexities that maybe arise from multicultural English teaching, which I agree is really complex, isn't it? If you just have one language, easy. If you have lots of languages, lots of cultures, if you want to involve everybody, it is complex. So any idea, Sofia, how to minimize the complexities?
The complexity can be minimized through inclusive learning approach.
Have you got any practical tips for that?
The practical part I've tried is where we get different learners peer teaching one another, and they all get different ideas, different practices. So in most cases, you find that why we are leaving out the use of cultural artifacts that creates complexity, like maybe not knowing the language. Another thing is because you find that an educator is also not aware of the given languages in the class. But inclusive approach is very important.
It might be impossible, mightn't it, for the teacher to know all the languages in class. But then, of course, we get the students to teach their part. Yeah. And a final question here. And I wonder after that if anybody would like to unmute. If you'd like to unmute and you have a question to ask, then please put your hand up. Final question in the chat was, what's the best method to tell about our local cultures? Have you got one final best method, Sofia?
The best method to tell about our culture is having the practical part, coming up with the performance tasks. An example is guiding students to come up with different folk tales, different stories, riddles, and different cultural items, present them in class, share them with the rest, and there we go.
Thank you. That's lovely. It's been so interesting for me to see all the photos and the different artifacts and learn about the different ways that people can do this in class in Uganda and other countries. Is there anybody else who'd like to contribute with something about the different cultural artifacts in their country, or any more questions? If anybody would like to put their hand up, we've got a few minutes now just for a couple of final questions.
Hello, Linda, there's a question for you. Please check your WhatsApp from Telegram group.
Yeah. Sorry, I wasn't on it. Okay. Yes, so we've got a question from the Telegram group. Thanks very much for that, Blessing. How can cultural understanding raise critical reflection? Interesting question.
Cultural integration raises critical thinking when learners or students are given a chance to think, to research, and collect different ideas, different opinions together, and then they present to the rest or share out.
Okay, thank you. And another one from the chat. How will you implement a differentiated lesson plan using cultural artifacts?
The lesson plan can be designed through different trainings. You first train and come up with people. Then you have to know which cultural background am I going to have of different presenters. Then now we come up with the differentiated cultural content.
So it's about the teacher knowing the students, isn't it? And understanding the groups,
Yes.
which of course is the theme for the quarterly theme at the moment for teaching English. Okay, so thank you so much for all the questions and the integration and all your examples, which are lovely, and all the pictures and visuals. Thank you everybody else for responding in the chat, and over to you, Steve, to end it.
Thank you so much. I've been struggling with internet myself, which is actually quite odd. It doesn't have an open, so but yeah, I'm actually glad to have you, Sofia, on this on this stage today. It was very interesting to see how you've actually integrated cultural items in your teaching, and you've actually shared very good examples of how other teachers can also do that. So very, very, very actually thorough. Thank you so much for being here. Just to finally just invite everyone who's on this session today that we have another webinar on Saturday, the 14th of June, still on the same theme. So we have Ezin, who's going to be still focusing on understanding your learners and how you can support them better. So here should we discuss how we can actually support learners who have difficulty speaking in class. So there's going to be a lot of practical strategies that you're going to learn, but we'll share the slides with you, and you get the link to sign up to that webinar. So, but also remember that we have next Friday we have Sofia, who's also going to be a host at our Telegram group, where she's also going to do a follow-up session with more questions from the community. We expect more questions from the community, and we'll actually continue the conversation around cultural items over there. So thank you so much, as well, Linda, for co-hosting. Thanks, Abel and Blessing, for hosting the chat and Telegram. So I wish everyone a good weekend, and I hope to see you next Friday for the Q&A follow-up. Thank you so much.
Thank you too. Thank you, members. Thank you for.
Thanks, Sofia.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Linda.
Cheers.
Bye bye. Have a nice dream.
Thank you.